And so, welcome again to Aging While Black Live. I am Raymond Jetson, and I have the wonderful pleasure of spending time in this space with some amazing people on an ongoing basis. For those of you who are just joining us and learning more about our effort, Aging While Black is a multifaceted platform that elevates the voices of Black elders by amplifying their stories, perspectives, and realities. We generate collective learning and collective action around the systemic inequities faced by aging Black people and co-create policy and people-driven responses for a better reality. And so I'm excited that you are here, and I am extremely excited to welcome Nadine Cornish to AWB Live. Welcome and greetings, my sister.
And thank you so very much, Mr. Raymond. I am so excited to be here.
So I've enjoyed our conversations that we've had an opportunity to share just in learning one another. And I'm excited to invite others to share in this space with us today. And so over the last few days in our uh, promotion of today's conversations, we've shared a bit with people about you and your work from your bio. And so they know those formal elements of who you are and what you do. But how would you introduce yourself to this community?
Well, to this community especially, I'll start by saying I am a native New Orleanian, born and raised, proud member of from the 7th Ward, St. Bernard. And so my roots are deep in New Orleans, and I feel like I'm home. I feel like in this space I'm absolutely positively home. Some call me the caregiver's gumbo queen. I have a series of books that are part of the Gumbo series around caregiving, and I pretty much answer to anything. I love having the opportunity to serve and be in community with my people, and I'm grateful to be here with you today.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much, and welcome home in this conversation. And so, one of the things that we start each conversation with after this opportunity for self identification is, what does the concept of aging while Black bring to mind for you?
Mm. I can remember like it was yesterday, the very first conversation that I had with you about aging while Black. And the first thing I thought was, what a concept that we would actually talk about aging and everything that goes with that as Black people. And so the first thing that comes to mind is vigor, vitality, wisdom, and swag. That's the first thing that I think of when I think of aging while Black, because we are such incredible, unique people. That is one side of the spectrum. On the other side of the spectrum, however, I'm very concerned about the disproportionate representation in every major area of illness. And so it really it's a dichotomy, and it's mixed emotions when I think about aging while Black. I'm happy to have a cohort of people and friends and family who are very much on that initial spectrum I just spoke of, with the vigor, the swag, living life to the fullest. And then I have another cohort of loved ones, family members, and community members who are on the other spectrum. And that is of amazing concern. And I love the fact that we are intentional around aging while Black, and that this is becoming a thing.
And thank you so much for that. I absolutely love the dichotomy that you lifted up of this wonderful expression of who we are and who we can be as human beings, but also the realities that there are some experiences that are not ideal and that we have to have the ability to hold both as true as we go forward. And I think that that framing is absolutely critical. Well, one of the things that is, I mean, just painfully obvious is the passion that you and passionate interest that you have in this notion of caregiving. I mean, it's the handwriting is clearly on the wall. Uh, why is that the case?
Well, initially, it's the case because it was my personal experience, having the honor of my life to care for my beloved mother for 15 years, her final 15 years of life. I had the privilege of taking care of my mother. And when she passed, it became very, very clear to me that I had a calling on my life around caregiving, that my experiences with my mother was actually a training ground for me. It was an opportunity to learn about the system in ways that I didn't know about the system. I was fortunate to have a background in public health, so I had the ability and an advantage of navigating the system. But it was very clear to me that there were many in the same position that did not know how to navigate, that did not know how to advocate on behalf of their loved ones. And so after my mom passed, it literally became my purpose. Uh, I have the privilege of celebrating my mother every single day. Her legacy lives on through the work that I do. And most importantly, I am able to support caregivers across the country with understanding resources, navigating the system, and most importantly, reminding them of the necessity of taking care of themselves.
There were so many rich and meaningful terms that you used in inviting us into this important space. And just for my own benefit, I want to name some of them that stood out to me. I mean, you described the opportunity to care for your mom as an honor.
Absolutely.
You also described the aftermath of that as a calling, and a calling that was rooted in purpose. And these are not words, uh, concepts, expressions, values that we typically see associated with caregiving. And as I shared with you in our previous conversations, uh, your expressions have certainly had meaning, and have meaning and impact for me. I wanted to ask you uh, to kind of put the two things together for me. I asked you about aging while Black, and you talked about the richness and the tension that exists in that space, and then this reality around caregiving. My question would be, uh, what do you see as the role or significance of caregiving and aging while Black?
Okay. So I see that caregiving is intrinsically who we are as a people. We take care of each other. We have always taken care of each other, and we have been forced to take care of others. But I think caregiving is our nature. Caring is our nature. And so it's an intrinsic part of who we are. And so I think it goes hand in hand with aging while Black. When we age in community, even when we're not well, when we age in community, we are taken care of. We are looked after by the people who love us, and that is our community. That's our immediate family. That's our neighbors. That's friends. That's the church. That's our entire bubble and support system that shows up for us, just as we show up for each other. It's a lifestyle that we prescribe to exclusively once upon a time. And in recent decades, we have gotten away from that because we have moved away. And for those of us who have moved away from family, we're challenged with the responsibilities that go with long distance caregiving and the stress that's associated with being concerned and wanting the best for a loved one that we don't put our eyes on every single day. Technology has certainly helped with that, but it really provides obstacles and it makes it just more challenging to be able to care for each other the way that we did when we all lived in community. And so I
Yeah.
really believe that we are moving back. We are having to move back to that because fortunately we are living longer. And as a result of living longer, we have age-related illnesses that hamper that. We have lifestyle choices that hamper how well we age and limitations. And so I think that it's a natural congruent conversation that we must continuously have around aging while Black and caregiving.
Oh, I was, as you were talking, one of the thoughts that really became prescient for me is in Aging While Black, we talk about, the first pillar being recalibrate the village. It seems to me that part of that recalibrating the village are some personal thoughts around decisions around living arrangements and decisions we make about where we live and in proximity to whom, that is a vital part of recalibrating the village also going forward. Uh, that just
Absolutely.
really connected. Yeah. And so one of the things that has really impacted me, and Brenda, thank you for adding your comment in the chat, and I will remark on it in a moment. And I want to invite you and others, if you have questions, please drop them in the chat. But one of the things that really was powerful for me in our conversations is the raising of the issue of children as caregiving, as being a more recent phenomenon in the way that it is currently being manifested. Uh, why is this issue so important for us to focus on? And please feel free to frame it in any context you think helpful.
Absolutely. And I will quote the 14-year-old that I met in November who looked at me and said, "It's cool what you do. And the fact that you're celebrating children who are caregiving, but this ain't brand new," unquote. This
Mm,
ain't brand new. And he went on to say that his mother took care of her mom when she needed to be cared for, and she took care of their grandmother. And so the idea of children, especially our children, participating in the caregiving process, it is what we did. It is what we do. It is who we are. We take care of each other, and everybody participates in the process. The first child that introduced me, that I met, who formally introduced himself to me as a caregiver, he was 12 years old. He lived in New York, and he was familiar with the caregiver's guardian because his grandmother had begun participating in the support groups, and he noticed a change in her. And so he was the first kid 18 months ago who said to me, this is good. When is the kids support group? And that stopped me in my tracks because I had never even considered a kid support group. And he told me that he had been helping to take care of his uncle since he was 2 because his uncle had cerebral palsy and couldn't do anything. He said, so at 2, I could bring him the remote control. I could pick up books and hand him whatever he needed. And at this point, his uncle is his best friend, and he is looking forward to going to medical school so that he can find a cure for cerebral palsy. So our children have always been in the mix. And some of us are so accustomed to it that we don't even see it, right? We don't acknowledge it. And I'm one of those individuals. I wasn't acknowledging it. And now, as part of my work, I am absolutely positively acknowledging kids and making sure that I do my part in terms of helping to create policy around the recognition of children who are caregiving to ensure that they are supported. Because once again, who are the kids who are disproportionately impacted by this responsibility? It starts with family and love, and then it melds into responsibility and obligation. And oftentimes that's too much responsibility and obligation, especially when there are no safety nets around those children.
And you have expanded, if I could put words there, you've expanded this sense of calling and purpose to include a particular focus on this strand of reality of children as caregivers.
Absolutely. Youth caregivers. In
Yeah.
the state of Colorado, where I live, there was nothing on the books around youth caregivers. There were no services, no support. There was no data. And our first step is identifying and creating the data. And so we have partnered with the Healthy Kids Survey that's done in every state. We have partnered with that entity that is it's funded by CDC, and in Colorado, it's administered by the Department of Health. And so we have partnered with them to have them ask the question so that children can self-identify as caregivers, and we can finally have numbers. We know the reality is there. We just don't know how many. And once we have the data, then we can request the resources to support the numbers.
So allow me to take just a moment for those who are sharing and those who will share in watching this conversation. Allow me to put this in the context of aging while Black so that people will understand beyond just the conversation. And so one of the things that we talk about is this shared learning and this collective action that is people and policy, both of these realities and being able to do this. We also talk about looking at the issue vertically, and so identifying these key issues from across the country that are impacting Black aging and creating these platforms for shared learning and shared action among people. And one of the top three issues that has emerged is caregiving. Uh, I would share with you that the overwhelming nature of the conversation around caregiving is about the adult experience and in caregiving for parents and elders. There's a very thin, if any, strand of conversation around the reality of children. And so my best hope for Aging While Black is that we become an instrument in broadening these absolutely critical conversations. You know, my third ear heard that this survey is in 50 states.
Exactly.
And so it's not something where we would ask people to do something that's not being done, but it is as simple and as critical as making certain that that question is being asked and that somebody is intentionally paying attention to the answer and what that means for a community. So that's the intent behind Aging While Black. And I just wanted to name that very real moment in the powerful revelations you were sharing.
And really, thank you for emphasizing that, because that is a fact. There are only 3 states. Colorado is number 3, and Hawaii now will be the 4th that's actually collecting this data. Florida and Rhode Island were 1 and 2. And so I'm in talks with California, my people in California, and anybody listening to this, if you are connected to any entity that is serving youth or interested in serving youth, this is really important, because As we talk about aging while Black, our family is an integral part of that. And our children are an integral part of that. Oftentimes, because we don't have the resources to bring in additional help. And even when we do, we have a critical work shortage of workers in our communities. And finding the quality of care that's needed is becoming really difficult. And there are a number of states, especially some of our southern states, that are adopting policies now where we are making it so much easier for children to work. And I say that, right, for children to work. And that's part of that is because of the recognition of the shortage in the workforce. And with that deficit, who's the most vulnerable that's going to be taken advantage of in many circumstances? And so I think it's really important for those of us who are in the position to identify those resources, identify those entities and organizations that could really carry the banner around the issue of children and caregiving, and particularly around simply identifying them. And the easiest way to do that is certainly through the CDC survey that's done in every state.
Well, certainly to the degree and bandwidth of aging while Black, as it is currently configured and as it evolves, this is certainly an issue that we want to partner with you and support its expansion across this country. So as we prepare to wrap up this conversation, I want to ask you to put on your personal hat for just a moment. You started by talking about the honor of caregiving with your mom and what that led to in terms of purpose and calling. For those people who are watching this video, either this conversation, either now or looking at the video later, who are in this season being caregivers, what would you say to them?
Well, the first thing I want to say is thank you. Thank you for your heart. Thank you for your time, your energy, your dedication, and your commitment to your loved one. And in addition to thank you, I want you to know that you matter and that what you do every day, it makes a difference. And lastly, I want to say that as important as caring for a loved one is, it pales in comparison to the necessity of self-care, to the necessity of you taking care of you, because we want you here, and we want you here well and vital and living your best life. And you cannot do that if you are not making yourself a priority in this caregiving journey, in this caregiving season.
Thank you. Aging While Black seeks to be this catalyst for building a movement around these pillars of recalibrating the village, embracing innovation and rapid change, and leaning to Sankofa, this wisdom of the elders. Knowing what you know, what would be your best hope for this movement?
That is it AWB? Is that the official?
Yeah.
Okay. So my hope
that's the swag moniker.
Yeah, that's the swag name. Okay, that AWB continues to thrive, that it grows exponentially across this country as well as outside of this country, so that we can grab those who are no longer living in this country. But my hope is that it really expands and continues to grow, and that it is the continued reminder of who we are as a people, that it draws us back home. It draws us back home. I'm going to mention Dr. Tima Bryant right now. She is a psychologist in Southern California at the University of Pasadena. and she wrote a book called Homecoming, and she defines homecoming as and self-care as coming home to self. And I believe that aging while Black is really about coming home, coming home to our authentic self. Some of us have been gone too long.
Nadine Cornish, thank you so much for making time for this conversation and making a deposit into the lives of people and prayerfully the movement. Thank you, and I am so grateful for your time.
My honor. Thank you so much.
God bless you. Thank you guys for joining us for Aging While Black Live. Join us again. We'll be in this space within the next couple of weeks for another rich conversation. Thank you.